Simon Pegg, how are you keeping today?
Very well, thank you very much.
First question right off the bat. Favorite Spielberg moment?
I always try and pick something small with this because he's so famous for his kind of grand gestures, which he's so brilliant at framing. But there's a bit in E.T. I love when Elliot first sees E.T. in the cornfield outside his house, and E.T. screams and runs off, and Elliot screams, and then Elliot sort of watches where he's been, and you see the garden gate swing shut and the trash roll down the steps, and then you just push in on Elliot, and he walks up to the swing set and stops the swing, and he's looking. It's that incredible look of wonder that Spielberg does so well. Little things like that, people forget how good he is at those things as well.
And this is obviously not your first time working with Steven, but he has said himself that this was like right up there in one of the most difficult films he's ever made.
Yeah.
Is that something you, having worked with him a second time, you're like, oh, he is really like going for it this time, because it's obviously way more technical than it was
I think there were lots of challenges, definitely. I mean, when we did Tintin, it was the first time he'd done performance capture, and he had the performance capture camera with him on set, and he'd be looking at the scene through the camera, which is because that's what he's used to doing, is shooting a scene through a camera. By the time we came to do this film, he'd realised that he doesn't have to worry about that at that point. He can come back to the scene after we've got it all captured in the computer, and then he can shoot it. So this time he was just him, and he was directing us one-on-one, which is interesting because it was just about the performance. But then there were also things like shooting the scenes with myself and Mark Rylance in the archive, where it had to seem like a sort of a document almost that you could sort of scan. He came up with this way to shoot with 8 cameras in an ellipse, so that he'd have the scene shot from various different angles and could then stitch them all together, so you could sort of literally move around it like that. So seeing him doing that kind of problem solving on the spot and scratching his head and loving it, really, even though he was, and he works well under pressure. He made Jaws under pressure. That's
true, yeah. Like it does seem every time he's put under pressure, he ends up making one of his better works.
Yeah,
anyway,
he thrives under pressure,
Not to put too fine a point on it with the Avatar business now, but I feel a lot of fans of you would see you as their avatar on the big screen. They're like, oh, Simon Pegg is the fanboy who's made it.
Right.
Do you still, having worked with just about everyone at this point and worked in as a part of every single major franchise, give or take, do you still like step back and be like, oh dang, like this is happening, like I'm with Spielberg today, or I'm on Star Wars today?
I do whenever Steven walks in the room, I feel like that, but it's just because it's a privilege to know him and to get to work with him. I am a film fan, and I grew up watching his work, and so to get to work with him is a treat. I try and take everything as much in my stride as I can, and I understand that obviously fanboying out isn't always a constructive thing to do, but but I also try and hold on to that sense of wonder and enjoyment about what I do, because otherwise I'd become cynical and jaded, and that would be a terrible thing.
It would, because I feel in your shoes, I would be the person who's like drunk at 3 a.m. going, look who I can ring from my phone. I've literally got everyone here, and do you not believe me? And then ring them, and then I don't get any more jobs. So that must be hard for you to just like, no, I'm being professional now.
Yeah, I think, well, you get a sense of what to do and what not to do. And and also you don't want to, I could bother Steven all day long by asking him questions, and he's very forthcoming when you want him to tell you a story. He'll tell him, and not in a way that's like, oh, listen to me. That's just his life. Mm-hmm. So in those moments between shots on set, when we're setting things up and we're just hanging around chatting, I will say, so tell me about Jaws. And he will. And he's told us some fantastic stories about just his life in movies and anecdotes from some of my favorite films. It's such a treat to be like, by the horse's mouth.
Yeah. Obviously, Ready Player One is a fantastic love letter to nerds and the passion that they have and geekdom and everything around the world. And it's all about getting the high score at one particular thing. What one thing in the world do you reckon you can do better than anyone else?
Be Simon Pegg.
Right. I suppose, yeah, I will have to check a dictionary and see if there's another Simon Pegg who's more Simon Pegg.
There's I think there's another guy on Twitter who has the same name as me, because I've seen it come up a couple of times. People think that I've said something and it's him. And I think he has about 10,000 followers, which he's got off the back of having the same name as me.
Right.
Although he puts a little disclaimer in his bio, but I'm sure he's not doing too much to stop that.
He's like, not that Simon Pegg.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
But he still creams off a lot of people that don't realise it's not me.
But does he look like you?
I don't
Like,
know
is
what
there a
he looks
picture?
like.
No, you don't know what he looks like. Okay, and having worked, like I mentioned, with literally everyone, not nearly everyone. Who is there left that you're like still on the list? Top of the list.
The Coen brothers, I think. The Coen brothers are a filmmaking duo who I've also long been a fan of. Raising Arizona is one of my all-time favorite movies as a kind of demonstration of the art of comedy filmmaking. That film is the holy text for me. You know, it's a brilliant sort of Looney Tunes live action, and I think the breadth of those guys' sort of output as well in terms of what they can do as serious filmmakers, so-called, or making a comedic film or something lighter. They just seem to be able to do it all, and I love their intelligence and their attention to detail. So they're you know, I'm not just a sort of sci-fi nerd. I also like
The real world.
The real world too.
Sure. Simon Pegg, thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Like many of you, I only came here to escape. But I found something much bigger than just myself. Are you willing to fight?
Help us save the oasis.